I was a typical 12-year-old girl then with a 10-year-old brother. We fought, as siblings often do. I was the cheerleading, gymnastics, ballet type of girly girl my mom had brought me up to be, while my brother was engaged in typical male pursuits like baseball, basketball, and soccer. My father wanted him to play football, but my mom was convinced that my brother was too small for the sport. Regardless, my brother was never really into any of the sports he played, nor was he any good at them. Things started to change one afternoon after school when my brother did not have a practice, and I was supposed to be at one of mine. My cheerleading practice had ended abruptly when my coach and one of the moms of the girls had to rush one of my fellow cheerleaders to the hospital with a twisted ankle. I did not call my mom to tell her to come pick me up because one of my friend's mom offered to drive me home that sunny afternoon. I thanked her for dropping me off before I walked inside and talked with my mother for a little bit before I went up the stairs. As I stepped into the carpeted upstairs hallway, I heard a noise coming from my room. I crept towards my door that was slightly ajar. I could see the light in the room was on even though it was the middle of a bright, sunny afternoon. From that alone, I knew my little brother was in my room. He had pulled down the shades to hide whatever he was planning and simply had not expected me to come home so early to catch him pulling whatever prank I was sure he was trying to pull on me. I could hear him rustling around in my room as I reached the door. I stood there for a second in silence as I heard the room grow silent. I smirked as I threw the door open and shouted, "I caught you, you little twerp." My brother froze as he stared at me. I was unable to say another word as I gazed back at him in shock. I shook my head slightly a few times as I could not believe what I was seeing. My annoying little brother who teased me about being so girly was standing in my bedroom dressed in one of my cheerleading uniforms. As I processed what I was seeing, I immediately thought back to the mock cheers my brother came up with to make fun of me for being a cheerleader. I smiled as I thought about the many times he called me prissy when he saw the pictures of me in my ballet recital outfits. The look in his eyes was a mix of shock and terror. He stood frozen where he stood, unable to make a move or utter a word until I let out a laugh I could not hold in any longer. I almost doubled over because I could not understand what would motivate him to put on one of my cheerleading uniforms. I collected myself long enough to give him a mock cheer as little payback for the all ones he had given me over the years. Be a sissy, be a sissy, bro, before I let out another laugh. I grinned uncontrollably at my brother as I saw him trying to squirm and pull the uniform off. As he did so, though, I caught a glimpse of my pink panties. "Are those my panties? You little freak!" I shrieked. My brother froze and nervously pulled down on the hem of the skirt of the uniform. His blushing face made me realize that his furiously shaking head was lying to me. Our exchange was interrupted by Mother shouting up the stairs in response to my shrieking tone, "Is everything okay up there, you two?" I glared at my brother with a smirk on my face as I thought about giving him up then and there, but I shouted back, "No, we're good, Mom." With my mom pacified for the moment, I turned my attention back towards my little brother. I started towards him, and he backed up slowly until his back was literally against my lavender-colored wall. Although I was only 2 years older than him, I had a good 3 inches on him and was stronger than he was. That was something that I had taken steps to demonstrate to him on more than one occasion when I felt he had taken something too far in the past. I gave him a menacing look as we stood a few inches apart. I clutched at the sweater top of my uniform and recoiled as I felt one of my training bras through it. "You little freak," I said again before I found myself starting to laugh as my confused anger dissipated into mere bewildered amusement once more. My laughter ceased as I caught the ashamed look in his eyes. My determination to make him pay for every joke about me being a girly girl broke down as I grew more focused on figuring why the hell he would even want to wear one of my uniforms. I asked him that, point blank. He just stared at me in silence as he blushed. His silence did not satisfy me, so I pinned him to the wall and said, "If you don't want me to call Mom up here to see what you've been doing while I'm out, you'd better answer me." "It was just a joke," he lied. "A joke? For who?" "You're the only one here," I countered. His cheeks turned red again as I knew that he could not think of some lie that would effectively conceal the real reason behind his actions. I pulled at the sweater top of the uniform and snapped the training bra against his chest as I smirked and asked, "Oh, are you growing boobies, little sis?" I could see tears starting to form in his eyes. His reactions were confusing me. That was the moment I put it all together. I realized that my brother's prior mockery of me was simply an act to conceal the fact that he was jealous of me. He was trying to covertly wear my uniform and underwear because he could not do it around anyone. I moved away from him and stared vacantly at his face as I realized that my brother's actions were anything but the joke that he was trying to play them off as. "Oh my God," I said in a monotone voice. "What?" he asked with a nervous tremor in his voice. I shook my head, unsure of how I should convey what I was thinking. "I was just curious," he countered. I could see the humiliation and fear in his eyes as he desperately came up with that poor attempt at deception. As I listened to him, I thought about the times I had found the dresser drawers containing my intimates askew and that my clothes in my closet were not where I remembered leaving them. I had figured that my mother had been searching my stuff for things she felt I was too young for. I knew at that moment, however, that it was my little brother all along. I was in a state of disbelief as I asked him, "How long have you been doing this?" The question took him by surprise. I could see the wheels spinning in his head as he frantically tried to come up with another lie. "Don't lie to me," I responded forcefully after my question was met by silence. "I'm not lying," he retorted in a low, soft voice that conveyed his weak position. I then told him about all the times I had found my things askew. I could see the fear in his eyes as I recounted them. He knew I had finally put two and two together. "It was Mom," my brother responded after I finished. "Then why don't we go ask her?" I said as I grabbed his wrist and pulled him towards the door. "No. Wait. Please," he said before he dropped to his knees before me. "I'm getting the truth one or the other," I responded. That's when he admitted that it had been him. He told me about what he had done and how ashamed he was to have put on my clothes so many times when I was not home. As I listened to his confession, I felt more than a little pity for the boy. I promised him that I would keep his secret, and I even told him that I would help him with it. He was not sure what that meant at the time, but the first time our parents left us alone when they went out together, he got the point. Shortly after they left, I offered him the chance to pick out an outfit from my closet to wear. He was a little bit hesitant to do so, but with a little prodding, I got him to pick one out. I gave him a pair of my panties and a training bra and let him get dressed in the outfit he picked out before I came back in and did his makeup. He was on cloud 9 throughout the whole thing. I enjoyed it so much that it almost didn't feel strange to me. I had to admit to myself that I liked our relationship a whole lot better when he was my little sister instead of my little brother. This went on for a few more weeks before Mom came home unexpectedly early. Neither of us heard the front door open or close when Mom came home early from her shopping trip. She was walking up the stairs when she heard us laughing at some television show and gushing over the dress the actress was wearing. To this day, she never told me what went through her head when she heard my brother saying he wanted one just like it. All I know is that she pushed open my bedroom door and peered inside. This time, my brother and I both froze. There was no hiding that we were sitting on the bed watching the TV dressed up like two normal girls our age. The look on my mother's face was pure shock. I don't know what I would have done if I had been in her shoes and saw my son sitting next to his sister with a silver butterfly clip decorated with rhinestones in his hair, dressed in a long-sleeved white graphic top, a black tiered skirt, black tights and silver flats with a rhinestone and faux pearl-covered thin strap at the vamp. What could you really say if you never saw it coming? I understood her response even then. Mom screamed at both of us. "What the hell?" I stared at her in silence with a slack jaw, but my brother was able to answer her. "Mom, I can explain." "I'm waiting to hear it, young man," she yelled back as she glared at him. She had taken care to emphasize her use of the word man to describe him. I could see how much the term hurt him, even though he knew it was what he was expected to be. We are all taught that boys are not supposed to be girls. While a girl can boyish, a boy cannot be girlish. I decided to fall on the grenade for him as I responded, "It was my fault, Mom." They both stared at me blankly for a moment before I explained, "I made him wear that stuff because he was teasing me about being a girly girl again." My mom shot me a disbelieving look, but she was ready to force herself to believe my lie if it meant that she would not have to deal with the truth. She started to scold me. She told me that I was screwing up her son and that I should leave punishing him to her and Daddy. It took a few minutes, but my brother finally ended her admonishment of me as he declared in a meek voice, "Mom, she didn't make me do it." A bewildered look replaced the angry one on her face. She looked at him in silence as he tugged on the hem of his short skirt. "Then why are you?" My mother started to ask, but stopped, knowing full well that she did not want to hear the answer. My brother blushed furiously as he told her that I had caught him in my cheerleading outfit and that we had been playing dress-up games ever since. "Did you ever think what your father would say about all this?" My mom shouted in response. My brother gulped as he answered, "Yes, that's why we kept it from you too." It would be years before my brother admitted to me that that was not the whole story. It turned out that my father had caught him doing just what I caught him doing a few weeks earlier when I had been away on a school trip. Rather than punishing him, my father let it slide, provided that my brother made sure that neither Mom nor I ever found about it. I wish he had told me, but I understood why he did not. I really have to give my father credit. He certainly handled it better than most guys I know would. My brother's response, however, did not appease my mother. She was furious that we were covering up my brother's weekly girly girl sessions. She could not understand how he was so willing to let me make him over and act like my little sister. She stormed out of the room after she ordered him to put his own clothes on. He scurried out of my room to comply with her demands, scared of the consequences of not doing so. I sat on my bed with my chin between my bended knees, wondering if I had done something wrong by trying to help my brother out. I heard my brother close the door to his room before I got up and headed towards the top of the stairs. I could hear my mom on the phone as I reached the staircase. She was talking to some psychiatric office about scheduling an appointment for my brother. I felt my stomach sink as my deliriously confused mother kept speaking in frantic non-sequiturs as she tried to secure the earliest appointment possible for him. When she hung up the phone, she headed back towards the stairs. I raced through the hallway and back into my bedroom. I pretended to have not heard a thing when she came into my room and asked me to join my brother downstairs. We followed each other down the steps and sat in the kitchen as my mother explained her telephone conversation with the psychiatrist. He had told her that he could not diagnose my brother over the phone, but he believed that he could help with the situation. My brother gave me a frightened glance as he wondered just what kind of help the man would provide him with. My mother told us that she had made the appointment, which only seemed to make my brother look even more worried. I tried my best to console my brother after my mother dismissed us from the room, but he was too messed up by the whole situation. He suffered in silence for days as he waited for his first trip to the psychiatrist's office. When the day finally came, Mom left me home alone while she took him to the office. Daddy didn't even know about it. We had to keep it a secret from him. Mom was even paying the psychiatrist in cash to avoid an obvious paper trail for Daddy to catch. I waited for them to return by the front door with an anxious feeling in my stomach that stayed with me from the moment they left. From the look on Mother's face when she got out of the car, I knew that she did not get the answer she was looking for. I asked how everything went, and my mom politely brushed me off. Her response spoke volumes to me, so I followed my brother up the stairs and asked what happened. He told me that the doctor was not sure if he was a crossdresser or a transsexual based on his responses. That either was an option was something my mother evidently had tremendous difficulty accepting. The psychiatrist told my brother and mother that he should be allowed to explore his cross-dressing so that he could make the determination for himself. I told him that was great, but he was a bit nervous about doing it when Mom was home. I brought his concerns to my mom's attention, and she went and spoke to him. And sure, she was not upbeat when she told him that he could follow the psychiatrist's recommendations until their next appointment, but she made it clear that he could. My brother came into my room after that and told me what she said. I hugged and I told him that everything would be okay. He smiled at me. It was a half smile though. I could sense his despondency about even wanting to put on a dress again after what my mother had put him through. As I pulled out outfits from my closet to entice him to follow the doctor's advice that my mother had begrudgingly accepted for him, however, he came around. He dressed up almost every moment that my father was not around the house after that while we waited for the weeks to pass until his next appointment, which was scheduled for the day after my parents' anniversary. I enjoyed the time I was able to spend with him after school when I was not out with my friends or at cheerleading or ballet practice. It was a lot nicer to have a little sister around than a little brother who was trying to overcompensate for desires he thought were wrong. I realized how much he wanted to be like me the more time we spent time together. We would look at clothes girls were wearing on the TV and online and rate them. His tastes were very similar to mine, and I even had him pick out an outfit out online that I told Mom was for me. Of course, I wore it once to try to fool her before my brother basically took it for himself. My brother was still sensitive about his situation though. I learned that not long after I let him wear one of my old recital costumes with a pair of my pink tights and toe shoes. I thought back to the insult he had hurled at me when I wore that same costume 2 years earlier and asked with a smile, "So, sis, who's prissy now?" A scowl appeared on my brother's face as he blushed and instinctively went to take off the bell-sleeved, tunic, chiffon dress with a princess seam. I was surprised by his reaction given our friendly rapport. After I processed his response, I hugged him and told him that I was just joking. He nodded to me, but I could sense that I had stoked the fires of his self-doubt. He ended up taking off the costume and putting his boy clothes back on. It took a few days before he was able to work up the nerve to ask me to let him wear some of my clothes again. I was happy to see that he had been able to put his belief that his desires were wrong aside again, even as my mom had been actively favoring him when he was wearing boy clothes after she had acted so distant towards him whenever she saw him wearing my clothes. We talked about what he wanted to wear, and we settled on an outfit consisting of my blue turquoise ruffle dress and a pair of white sandals with a 1-inch block heel. He put the outfit on, and I could see him start to beam as he looked in my vanity mirror at the dress's sweetheart neckline and how its spaghetti straps looked on his shoulders before I gave him a blue and white headband with a sequin bow to pair with the outfit. He smiled at the headband that I had caught him silently admiring the day before when I wore it. He placed it on his head and we went downstairs. Mom hung her head as she saw us. I think my brother's girlish giggling with me was like a knife into her heart. Her hopes that he had gotten it out of his system were dashed, and we both could sense the irritation in her voice as she asked us what we wanted for dinner. We told her, and she turned away from us as we started playing a game together on the computer. We were so wrapped up in it that we did not hear the front door open. We turned as we heard our father peer around the corner and ask, "Kids, where is Mom?" We stared at our father in silence as he gazed back at us in disbelief. He clutched the flowers in his hand close to his chest. We had never expected him to be home so early, and neither had Mom. We later learned that my father had decided to come home early, a day before their anniversary, to surprise Mom with a nice dinner at a fancy restaurant. Mom turned a corner in the hallway and caught my father's dumbfounded expression. "Honey, what are you doing here?" she asked nervously as she rubbed her neck. While the flowers in my father's hand were a dead giveaway as to what he was doing there, she was desperate to change the subject even though my brother's appearance had yet to be raised. Daddy asked to speak with my mother in private. They went to their room and talked for a good half an hour while my brother and I waited. The wait felt so much longer than 30 minutes. It felt like days to me as we watched the clock while we waited for my father's reaction. He came down with my mother. He had an expressionless look on his face. He had his arm round my mother's shoulder as he told my brother that he supported the psychiatrist's recommendation and that he did not have to hide what he was doing around him. I could sense that my father was concerned about my brother. It was not a judgmental concern though. My father did not seem to have any scorn for my brother. He did not seem to look down on what he was doing or wearing the way my mother did. He just seemed to be worried for him. I would learn later that those worries had to do with those outside of our home and my mother. That my father was so much more accepting of it than my mother was a shock to me, but I was happy that we had at least one ally among our parents. It made it all seem more bearable. Daddy hugged us and asked Mom if she could finish fixing a meal for us and get ready for her surprise anniversary dinner. Mom was never one to pass up my father's invitation for a fancy meal she did not have to cook, so she whipped together something simple for us as fast as she could before she ran upstairs and got ready. Daddy helped us clean up in the kitchen and acted as if nothing was off about my brother. I almost could not believe it. I noticed how at ease my father put my brother by simply not saying anything about how he was dressed. Mom came back down wearing one of her nicer dresses and told Daddy she was ready to go. Daddy gave her a big smile and complimented her. He then made sure that my brother and I both told her how good she looked as well. With that, my father escorted her to the door. As she walked out the door, my mother called back to us, "I expect you two to be in bed when we get back." "Okay, Mom," we responded in unison. "Have a good night, girls," Mom responded. We saw her come to a stop as she realized what she had said. My father hugged her and closed the door behind them before he led her down the steps of the front stoop. I turned to my brother and asked with a smile, "So, sis, do you want to learn how to walk in heels?" That boy beamed and pulled at the hem of his dress as he replied, "Sure, sis." I led him up the stairs as we headed to my room for what I knew would be the first of many more lessons I would give him.